All right, and here we are in the feature match here. Javier Dominguez against Piotr Glukowski. And yeah, of course, Piotr chose to go with some absolutely shiny cards here. How do you feel about that, Spike?
Well, I'm excited to get to see Magic Online's new foil treatment. Right here, shining in our faces. I like it. I think that previously, the difference between foils and non-foils was pretty minimal, and I
Yeah.
like that. I like that if you like the idea of foils, you have actually something that looks like a shiny Magic card instead of you have to like squint at. Is this foil? I can't really tell.
Well, I hope you brought your sunglasses as well, Spike, because you're going to have some shiny stuff to look at from me as well. So,
Yeah. For those who don't know, the card all the way on the left in Kanister's hand is the One Ring.
of course.
I'm not going to comment any further on it, but that is what it is. Kanister kept a very interesting one land Amulet of Vigor hand. No other lands in the hand, but being on the draw, tons of lands in the deck. You're pretty likely to find one, and maybe one bounce land is all you need here.
Yeah, definitely. And playing against these Rakdos scam decks, I pretty much keep any playable hand. Now, this is kind of teetering the playable mark, of course, but, mulliganing against this deck is just so rough.
Yeah, I agree. It's this is one big aspect to like why scam is so good, right?
Yeah.
Keeping a hand that doesn't have a solid plan is very likely to lose against such a proactive deck like scam, but also mulliganing against the Thoughtseize Grief deck is also not the best plan either.
Yeah, no, and that is definitely the pinch that this deck puts you in. And yeah, I mean, it's just the best deck for a reason. There's always going to be a best deck, and there's always going to be pitfalls to play against it. But that's just one of them. Now, a main thing I got to ask you about here, Spike, is how do you feel about all foil cards and then white bordered forests?
It's a statement for sure. I think notably the forest is not not foil. uh I don't know. It's like hurting my eyes to look at, but
Yeah, I was gonna go with I think my eyes are starting to bleed, but starting to hurt. I think that's pretty close as well.
sometimes it's more about sending a message than it is having a pretty deck of Magic cards.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so we got Regavan here connecting. No third land for Javier, but does have the ability to play Blood Moon right away. Or if you're not really afraid of getting Titan, this seems like a solid turn to play Fable. What are you popping off here?
It can be kind of scary to not just slam Blood Moon
Yeah,
against the Titan deck. That being said, there is a kind of an interesting dynamic against Dryad of the Elysian Grove here, where if you play Blood Moon this turn,
yeah.
then Canister has a forest. If Canister goes land Dryad, then at that point, all of the other lands will be able to tap for green, which means you can spend 2 mana and put a Primeval Titan into play. If you play the Blood Moon after the Dryad, all of the other lands are locked underneath the moon, or they can only tap for red, which can maybe prevent a Titan from being cast. Don't
Wait,
ask me.
so
Don't ask me why it works, but I know that I just memorize the rules and then come to understand them that way.
yeah, I know it's all about layers and that interaction and stuff, but man, layers has to be the most confusing thing, as well as if this removal spell gets exiled with a Dothy counter on it when you kill a Dothy. Those are like the two things that my brain just never
Yeah.
gets. But so if you do play Dryad, just to reiterate there, if you play Dryad after Blood Moon, even the lands you have can produce any mana, and then the lands you play, it's just layers of when the actual 3 drops hit the battlefield. Is that correct?
That's my understanding of it, and that's
Okay.
also I believe how it works on Magic Online. I've played a few games with and against Blood Moon in my time.
A few.
A few, yeah. And
Okay.
it'll be very interesting here to see if Kanister um is going to keep this Beseiju in hand or play it with the extra land drop here. Obviously, playing it is pretty appealing. You have a Summer's Pact in your hand. Any untapped land off the top lets you Titan, but if a Blood Moon comes down, you could no longer pick that Beseiju up with a bounce land.
Yeah, I think this is fine to play it because worst case scenario is probably Blood Moon for these big mana decks. I mean, it kind of always has been, but Canister does have just a good plan B of just play the One Ring, being at 18 life and being able to just start drawing enough cards. Eventually, you can find another way to get a Beseiju or even just a forest. Like you really only need a forest here, or start playing Dryads after the Blood Moon if somehow that works as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's also maybe something to be said for Canister saw that Javier could have played a Blood Moon last turn, chose to play
Yeah.
Fable instead. Playing around Blood Moon may be pretty reasonable or less reasonable at that point.
Yep, makes sense to me. So we got 4 damage coming in here. The One Ring is hit. So wow, now Javier has a big decision. Do you play a One Ring of your own up against an Amulet deck, which is still pretty powerful, or do you get the Blood Moon down? Like that is a tough choice. What are you leaning on here? I think I would Ring because there's no Titan in sight of like, killing you. Of course, a Titan could come down, but it doesn't end the game.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't end the game, and it's also true that you would have Blood Moon to basically kind of negate it. But also on this board, a 6/6 trampler is relatively difficult to beat, I would think. I
True.
don't know how like you're just not able to attack through it very easily. It's going to be putting a lot of green sources into play, and I think it is safer just to say I'm going to play a Blood Moon. In order for you to play a Primeval Titan, you have to have a Forest and a Titan in your hand, which is kind of asking a lot.
Yeah, that's probably the safer play. Definitely less flashy, but definitely safer. So
Mhm.
as we go, we see Kanister pick up double Besajus, which is pretty awkward. Definitely would have liked one land you could play this turn instead of holding it up. But drawing one of the Besajus at least is great to eventually deal with this Blood Moon when Kanister wants to start popping off.
Absolutely, and Javier also has a very good follow-up this turn. Orcish Bowmaster is gonna, punish Canister for having the ring in play in a pretty real way. Voidwalker is something that can potentially either pose a threat via damage or if Canister finds another copy of the One Ring, Voidwalker can cast a copy of the ring. It's very very relevant pressure here.
Definitely. I feel like every time I've had Voidwalker interactions, I think I just remember back to the end of the Pro Tour where, like Calcano had his Ulamog taken with a Dothi out and like the game just ended with Dothi
Mhm.
being able to cast that. Every time I cast a Primeval Titan off a Dothi, my opponent always just gets Besage, or I mean, excuse me, Otawara, and then just wrecks me with it. So I've learned to not do that play anymore, but it is still a fun one, of course.
Yeah, very fun. I just that's such an iconic moment for the Pro Tour. Calcano just throws the Ulamog over to Jake and says, "Take it."
So good.
Yeah, one of the most memorable Pro Tour moments ever, maybe.
Yeah, no kidding. Lightning Helix who? All right, so we
So
see Bowmaster coming in response to the activation to get some extra damage, and I mean, this looks like a lethal attack that Canister has to do something about.
yeah, at least he has the One Ring to fog for a turn.
Yep.
So, and one nice thing here too is that Canister has the option of playing the Celestia Sanctuary from his hand before dealing with the Blood Moon, which means is going to enter untapped and not cost you a bounce land. So you can go play Celestia Sanctuary, tap Forest, tap Besage or Brightens with Gardens, Besage the Blood Moon, and then you'll have 5 mana left over. So at that point, we could choose to either I guess it's really only play. Oh, there is an amulet in hand. I didn't see
Yeah.
there's an amulet. That actually that changes the dynamic a little bit because you might want to
Pick
use
it
the
up
extra
itself,
mana.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think that's maybe where we land.
Looks like it's going to be the One Ring and then probably Sanctuary into Amulet if you don't find a different land.
Mhm. It's
Makes sense.
interesting. I would think that you might want to prioritize using the mana from the bounce lands this turn since you're like just so choked on mana and you're under a lot of pressure. But Canister is definitely a very calculating player and a very good player. And I'm trying to see what it is he's seeing here.
And he definitely now has protection from, his pact being taken, from Amulet being destroyed. So this really looks like to me, next turn you start with Boseiju, you have 4 mana available, plus Sanctuary equals 6, and then we have Pact for Titan next turn. So as it stands, Canister will have one of those turns where he gets
Yeah,
to have Amulet in play and Titan, and maybe can even splice in a Dryad here if the math works out. That'll be a little bit more interesting.
yeah.
But if he can do that, it's probably GG.
I think what Canister's plan is to the Sage of the Blood Moon next turn, use
Yeah.
the Simic Growth Chamber and both Mycon's with Gardens to copy the amulet twice. Then the
Mm.
Celestia Sanctuary is going to give him 6 mana, but also the Dryads at that point are going to net mana when you play them. You go -3 mana from the Dryad, play the Celestia Sanctuary +6, and then you can play both Dryads. You're +12,
Oh
and
yeah,
at
so
that
they
point,
they net
yeah,
3 each, right?
yes, they net
Yeah.
3 each, and then you can also do the plan where you Summer's Pact for a Titan doubles Simic Growth Chamber, Slayer West, and get another Titan. That being said,
Yeah.
the interesting thing here is Javier is going to be able to cast one of Canister's One Rings off the Dathi Voidwalker to stop him from dying to Valakids or anything. You have protection from everything at that point.
But
Could
then
also maybe
even oh, sorry to interrupt you there, Spike.
that's okay.
But then isn't there? I'm kind of looking at lists here as I'm saying this, but then can't Canister maybe Otawara the ring back and just do it again? Nope, no Otawara in this list. So yeah, I guess the whole second ring plan looks pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know where you got your Otawara trauma from, but I think I've never even it's been so long since I've seen an Otawara and Amulet Titan.
Maybe this was a dream of mine, you
Yeah,
know?
maybe.
Maybe this wasn't an actual real thing here.
I bet it did happen, but it's something I've been managed to avoid.
Ah, this just in. Inspiring Spike calls Corey a full-on liar for the story, you know? More news at 11.
Yeah, we can duke it out of the next match.
That sounds good. So speaking of duking it out, kind of as we get this turn going and Canister goes for this kind of complex line, were you just pretty locked in on your Gruul Storm deck, or did you have any kind of metagaming plan that you had, or anything you put me on in general?
Yeah, so I really didn't want to play an artifact deck today, an artifact focused deck, something that was weak to disenchants. Basically, like all Super League, I've been playing scales or food decks or the
Yeah,
Timeless Lotus deck, and I knew that even if I figured that there was a good chance you'd be on scam since you did so well with it over this weekend.
yeah.
Um, but I wanted to play something that was more resilient to that. I've been doing really well with this red green storm deck on stream and in the challenge last weekend. And I also think it's a deck that people just kind of haven't played against. And so maybe I can get a little bit of edge that way. I did consider playing mono black coffers, mono black without coffers. I considered playing scam, but this is kind of where I settled at yesterday.
Cool. Yeah, that's the one thing I thought you for sure would never do in a million years was actually play scam. I figured it was too against your brand, so I thought I was safe for that. But then I put you on the Gruul Storm deck because I've been watching your stream as well, and then I put you on number 2 and 3, kind of a close second with Scales and a Bean deck. But I really thought you were going to be playing some Storm action because the deck just looks sweet, and you said it like there's no way I have a lot of experience playing against it, no matter what.
Yeah. Did you consider, since you did so well with scam over the last weekend, you've been like kind of pivoting into a scam main lately. Did you think about juking at all since for some deception?
If I was going to play against just you, I was going to juke pretty hard. But knowing that if I beat you and, even if I lose to you to be able to place higher, that I was going to play against either Kanister or Javier. And I honestly, I put them on exactly what they're on. I put Javier on Scam and I put Kanister on Big Mana. It could have either been Tron or Amulet, but I figure he was going to be going over the top. So I just wanted to make sure I had a good cohesive plan against them as well. But yeah, I think I would have went a little deep against you if it was just against you and we like reselected our decks for the finals or something.
Yeah, that would have been a very fun timeline for sure.
Yeah, it really would have been. But all right, kind of
Yeah.
catching everyone up to this game. All the things we were kind of describing is exactly happening here. Well, the line that you suggested, much better than the one I had. Getting those amulets tapped, going with Dryad, getting a bunch of extra land drops, and now we're going to see that Simic Growth Chamber and the Teleria West to be able to untap these. Make sure you tap it correctly. I suppose it really doesn't matter that much. Then you get another Titan and probably even another Titan. And then after that, you can get Boros Garrison, Slayer Stronghold, give all 3 Titans haste. And that should just lock it up. Are we missing anything that we didn't see a One Ring come into play for Javier? Or
Well, I think that Javier is likely just trying to value the pressure from the Voidwalker next turn. You get to
Sure.
copy it with the reflection of the Mirror Breaker. Oh, I guess you could have done that this turn. Copy the Voidwalker, cast the ring, but also you can copy Voidwalker end of turn, untap, copy again, and that's 9 unblockable damage.
He's dead,
Um,
right?
yeah, no, Javier is dead. Javier is not dead now. It'll be like 3 minutes of clicking.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I think that was maybe why he didn't. Oh, so are you asking why he doesn't cast it now?
Why he hasn't cast the One Ring during his turn? Didn't he have
Oh,
the
right, right.
opportunity to do it, or am I missing
Yeah, he
that
had, he
there's
had the
not an actual
opportunity.
ring?
Yeah, he had the
Okay.
opportunity. I think that he's just valuing the 9 unblockable damage more. But to some extent, like you can kind of have the attitude from Javier where if you cast the One Ring, you can stop yourself from dying that turn. But if Canister has a turn like this, you're really not in a very realistic place to win because
Yeah.
Canister will just get Valakut, destroy all of your creatures, and then you won't be in a position to actually translate that extra turn into a win.
Sure, sure. So I guess just dead no matter what. But I mean, he still had the option to reflection the Dothy, use the reflection copy to get the one ring. But yeah, just the fact that it's not going to create that much pressure, and then you don't have lethal through a bunch of prime times. Yeah, I suppose that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that that's it's a fine attitude. I don't think that casting the ring from Javier would have changed the outcome of this match, and I do think it is correct to sit here and make Canister click through it, just like even if Canister had Boros Garrison or Slayer Stronghold in hand, it would still
Mhm.
be pretty trivial to click through this. You just like never really know like how many pieces are like if both of those cards are somehow in Canister's hand, I think that he couldn't have comboed this turn. And
Yeah.
it's the semifinals. It's good to make him click through it.
Got to make your camera time no matter what while you're at it. And yeah, Canister, I don't think has really untapped too many lands with Amulet, in his time very often. Might be some user error. All right, just kidding. He plays a lot of Amulet and he plays it perfectly.
Yeah, Canister's very very good at Amulet. Has a huge range as a player, just one of the best out there for sure.
Yep, and you definitely have a huge range as far as these tournaments go as well, so it was tough to put you on decks. Luckily, I watch your content, so I was able to not only know that I think you were going to play the Gruul deck, but not take out my chalices and my ley lines as I was considering that. And I'm like, God, how do I sideboard against it? I was like, thank God Spike taught me how.
That's funny. I thought there was a chance you might not play the chalices and the ley lines. It was a
Oh, well,
well read Corey.
I honestly was not looking to play either of them anymore. Definitely cutting Chalice. I think there's a lot less rhinos in an open metagame kind of
Mhm.
thing. That was probably the first step I was going to make for my deck list this last weekend. And yeah, and as far as the ley line, maybe don't tell Canis, or I mean, don't tell Javier in case we play. I don't actually plan to bring him in the scam
Ooh.
mirror. It's just the thought of having him that makes him side out his scam elements more. That it's a little bit of a cheeky play, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's
All right.
interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. So welcome back to the booth here while they get ready for their sideboarding and stuff. Any big surprises there for you, Spike? How game one went?
I think not really. I think that seeing that Javier had a really good 7 card Blood Moon hand, I thought that maybe that he would get the win, but Canister's build is like just very good at playing through Blood Moon. Blocking Ragavan is like just something that I don't know. Ragavan has just gone from like such a crazy card in the format, such an insane turn one play to just feels like every deck is
So bad. It's
so
become
ready to stomp on
so
you.
bad. It still has its couple matchups where
Yeah.
you're just like, okay, this is the best card in my deck. But then most of the other one, it's the absolute worst. I mean, Ragavan has some serious range. It's almost looking like with that kind of range, like when do you decide that this is now a sideboard card? When it's so good in such few matchups that, like, usually that means a sideboard card, but it's also a powerful one drop that's awkward to sideboard. So yeah, Ragavan's in a weird spot.
Yeah, Seth Mansfield at the PT Barcelona was actually on. I'm going to sideboard 2 Ragavans. I'm not going to main deck any, and
Okay.
I think he was like maybe ahead of the curve on that.
Yeah.
Looking at the sideboards, do you think there's anything super interesting here, or is this more somewhat standard sideboard scam versus Titan?
Well, there's about 3 or 4 cards that I have no idea what they do in Canister's sideboard. So we got that
Mm,
to start with. And
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the matchup is for the Tarask. I don't think that
yes.
this is probably it. But
Spelunking, I have no idea what that card does. I'm sure
that's
you do. That
it's
sounds like a spike card.
it's a 3 mana enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you get to draw a card and put a land from your hand into play. And it
Okay.
says all lands you control enter the battlefield untapped. And if it's a cave that you put into play, you gain 4 life. But there are no caves in Canister's list.
How does that work with amulet interactions? Like, so you don't get the untap essentially, right? It just
Yeah,
takes
so
amulet out
it's
of the
it's
picture.
kind of a nombo with amulet. But if you have no
Okay.
amulets in play, it kind of functions like one amulet. So you can maybe see this as like a sideboard card for matchups where your opponents have lots of ways to remove Amulet of Vigor. You have like the extra copy, and you get to draw a card against the removal potentially.
Okay, because there was some matchups where I was like considering taking out amulets, and I believe I played amulets for the top 8, and I didn't know a lot about sideboarding with the deck and stuff, so I tagged in a coach Dom Harvey of kind of a plan against Rakdos scam decks, and maybe taking out some amulets or taking them all out. Is that maybe the matchup where you want this card, where you're taking that out, and this card already kind of does that effect?
Yep, maybe. For me, I'm always like scared to cut the amulets, but it does seem like something
Yeah.
like Dom is very comfortable to do. It also looks like Canister again has one land amulet keep, and seems like he did not deploy that game plan. Does have a dismember for the turn one Ragavan, which seems like it'll likely be incredibly good here, but is also not the card he chooses to play.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You gotta respect Canister's game no matter what. He is just living on the edge here. But I mean, let's get real. If he draws a bounce land, like it's not quite Titan time, right? Because you can amulet, bounce land is 4 land, play Dryad, 4 land again. That's only 5, huh? But you
It,
can
it,
play
it,
the One
it
Ring.
Well, you can Summoner's Pact for a Boreal Grazer, or I don't think Canister has an Azusa, but Summoner's Pact for Grazer or Azusa would
Yeah.
give you enough mana to Titan on turn 2. So that's likely what he's thinking with the
Nice.
turn 1 amulet.
And I mean, at worst, if you don't go for that line for some reason, you still just have the One Ring. Or if this Culligan's command, has something to say about Amulet Vigor #1, that will definitely slow down Canister by quite a bit. Like if Canister were to draw a bounce land and this Culligan's command hits Amulet, like it's brutal, right? Like you want to just play the bounce line, and you probably just have to pick up the forest and hope to draw another one at that point.
Yeah, I think so. To some extent, it is the motto of the Amulet Titan player. I just need to draw a
Yeah.
bounce land here.
Okay, this could be game. Bounce line could have just been game here.
Yeah,
Straight up putting Canister into the finals here with Javier Dominguez's little bit of a risk, but pays off. It's not there, and now a Fable's in play.
yeah, it is very funny. We went from Canister is one draw step away from winning to I'm just going to cast an Amulet of Vigor and I'm going to pass the turn.
Yeah, man. Canister as a player has range, and Canister's draws definitely have range this game for sure.
Yeah, and unfortunately for us, Javier has drawn 2 Terminates instead of a Terminate and a Mind Collapse, so we don't get to see the new Doomblade destroy an Amulet of Vigor.
Yeah, devastating news to not see that interaction. That's for sure. I wonder if, I mean, you still probably no way you take it out, right? Like the versatility of hitting a Dryad, probably Dryad and Amulet are a lot more likely than like Amulet and Prime Time.
Yeah, even like killing a Grazer and Amulet for 2 mana seems pretty nice. So get your
Yeah.
Ragavans and
Oh yeah,
tokens through.
definitely. Yeah, Regavan is good in the sense that it ramps you, like, and will keep ramping you more than likely. But you really don't hit very good hits off the Amulet deck outside of like the One Ring, and maybe Dryad is okay, but otherwise the hits are pretty
Yeah, for sure. It does seem like Kolagon's command still around, still shattering after all these years.
bad. Corey Burkhardt is just rejoicing still to this day.
Yeah, it is a pretty nice tool to have access to. I think as a scam, it's a card I've come to appreciate a little bit more watching
Yeah.
the Super League. The fact that like it gives you a game 1 out to ensnaring bridge from coffers, which is becoming more and more relevant, is super nice. It's a pretty nice card to have access to in the mirror, and it pitches to both grief and fury. So how bad can it really be?
Yeah, exactly. I ended up cutting it from my list, and that was a big concern. Is both Coffers and Tron being able to bridge me game 1, and it's pretty
Mhm.
brutal. And or I mean, not game 1, just in the match. But I've kind of just accepted that in game 1, and then when it comes to post board, I just have Shieldrids and a Croxa, and I'm just like, okay, this is kind of my anti-bridge tech. But I have been burned before by a bridge, and it'll probably happen again. Yeah, that's like my 16th card, and I just don't know what to cut to bring it in.
Mhm. Yeah, it does feel very borderline for me.
Yep.
So Canister has drawn a bounce land, and it's not just any bounce land. It's Golgari Rot Farm, which lets him cast Dismember right now if he wants for only 2 life instead of 4 life. And it'll be kind of fun to see if that ends up being the relevant thing between winning and losing this game.
So I kind of didn't see. Is this the first land drop, this Golgari Rot Farm, or was this the second?
This is the second. So Canister drew Golgari Rot
Okay.
Farm, played it, cast Dryad, used the Dryad land drop to be able to cast this Dismember.
Yeah, and I mean, that's all fine and good, but Terminate here, or even better yet, Fury to deal with Dryad, and then just have Canister basically starting over again, being like playing Rot Farm, only having 3 mana, can't cast the One Ring. All of this leads to a pretty awkward turn. If Canister were to draw like maybe another bounce land, no, because you can't leave 2 in play, so you can't really Summoner's Pact next turn. Are you surprised by no Fury here?
So yeah, it seemed like the line of Cast Fury, Evoke Grief was pretty good. I also think the line of Cast Terminate, Hard Cast Grief, I think you can copy Grief next turn seems seems good as well. This
Yeah,
this also sets you up for lethal next turn because you can evoke Fury, copy Fury with the Fable next turn.
at
Seems
11.
more or
Yep.
less the same.
Yeah, yeah, that seems good. No matter how you paint it, it looks like Javier Dominguez is going to be even this up, and putting one of them or putting Javier a little bit closer to being a finalist. It's working a little different this week's Super League than maybe our traditional in the Swiss rounds. We're not playing a round robin aspect. This is a top four. Someone goes to the finals. The only difference is the two losers of the matches will be playing for third and fourth.
That's true. I think the only way that Kanister could win this game is if Javier chooses to take the One Ring because he thinks it's going to be like the most relevant card in a fog, and Kanister top decks exactly another
Amulet.
copy of Amulet. Yeah, I think
Yep.
that's the only path to victory here. So
Yeah,
knowing
and
knowing that taking something else probably makes more sense.
yeah, I mean, I feel like you just don't take Act or Titan since they're both Titans essentially. I guess there's some thought to taking Pact because it can find you a different creature like a Grazer that could add some extra mana, but I like taking the One Ring right
Oh,
there.
so
So
Kanister
close.
draws Myconsith Gardens, which is so close to being an Amulet of Vigor here, but also
Yeah.
so far away.
So that's just game, right? The Fury is not known information. There's no free cards that Kanister can play in the face of this to stop this Fury interaction. So this should just be it.
Yeah, Javier very aware of the line, evoking the Fury, copying, throwing 11 damage at Kanister's 10 life, and we're about to go to game 3, I think.
And another thing, Javier very familiar with Rakdos mid-range strategies. This version is a little different than when he won the world championship with Rakdos in standard, but still a Rakdos deck nonetheless that shares some similarities. This one's definitely supercharged.
Now, Javier does have, I think, an uphill battle on the draw against Titan here. I think this is, in a big way, like what it's like to play fair decks like Scam, or I don't know, if fair is a controversial
Yeah,
word, but
chat is gonna lose their mind at you just calling it fair, buddy.
yeah, decks like Scam against linear strategies, where
Yeah,
if you win game one, you're feeling great because you're going to get to play one sideboard game on the play, no matter what. And sideboard games on the play with decks like this are just so good for you. Post board games on
definitely.
the draw things can be slow. Your opponents can have these nut draws that you're just like a little too slow to interact with.
Yep, totally makes sense here. Do you do any play draw with either of these decks, or is it pretty much business as usual from both sides?
Well, I am still having a little bit of a hard time deciphering exactly what's going on with Canister sideboard. Although I do want to point out that in an open deckless tournament, having an indecipherable sideboard is like somewhat valuable.
Yeah, and I mean
Um,
we see that at the Pro Tour all the time. Have all these one ofs that players kind of play around, and same with ley lines in the board for me. I don't plan on bringing them in, but they're still there because my opponent will see them, and I know no matter what, if I play against Javier or any other scam player, I know they're going to respect him probably, or I guess we'll see. But
yeah, very notably. Oh wow, went down on Daughtry Woodworker. That's very interesting. Also, these wear tears are pretty interesting as well, giving you more answers to Urza Saga and Dryad, something that you don't always see out of Scam.
yeah, I don't love Dothy against Amulet
Mhm.
that much. Bowmaster is definitely worse, but Dothy is most of the time a 2 mana 3/2 that really has not much other text unless you can pair it with, a nice little
Mhm.
Dothy into Grief Scam and play a prime time on turn 3 type thing. But
No, that
looking at
makes sense.
Canister's hand now, lands and spells. Gasps.
Yeah, still no bounce land though, but
Yeah, can't have it
not
all.
definitely in the top deck bounce land territory.
And
Um,
Javier's hand looks like when you bring a bunch of spare cards, like 14 extra cards to a tournament of things you're considering for your sideboard slots. Kind of looks like that so far from his hand.
it, it definitely does. Javier actually has a super
It's
sweet line
good.
next
Yeah.
turn.
Yeah.
Or an interesting decision point of either to destroy the amulet main phase to stop it from being copied with Myconsith Gardens, or
Ooh.
to potentially respond to Guardians copying the amulet, blanking 2 mana.
It blanks it. It doesn't interact really unprofitably, right? Like it'll
Mhm.
still just stay a Mycosynth Lattice Garden, right?
Yeah, it still stay as a land, but it cost him the tapping of the garden, tapping of
Sure.
the Radiant Fountain, and the turn. Also, just
Oh,
casting Thoughtseize and seeing what's going on, super duper reasonable here.
yeah, super reasonable. I think I would have went with just 2 mana Shatter. Honestly, I probably wouldn't have even waited. I think I would have just main phase Shatter, but I do not know if that's correct.
Yeah, I think all 3 decision points are super duper close, and I don't think it's even said enough that like when you're playing a game like this and you have just three good decisions and
Hmm.
try to figure out which one is the best one. This is like really what makes and breaks you as a Magic player.
Oh,
Uh,
100%.
yeah.
And that's what these players are great at and they practice at. And this is what Javier has set up. Thoughtseize to make sure the way is clear. And now you can just Necromentia away prime times and you never have to deal with that. I think this deck gets a lot worse when you don't have Primeval Titan in your deck.
Well, and draws Blood Moon. So here we have 3 amazing options. We can fuse Wear Tear, kill Dryad, kill
Wow.
Amulet. We can cast Blood Moon, but that cuts us off of being able to fuse Wear Tear in the future, or we can Necromancer. And I think Javier comes to the conclusion I would. Fuse Wear Tear is just such a great play this turn.
Yeah, wow, he really does have all the abilities here. And now, I mean, next turn, if that is popped off the Necromentia for Primeval Titans, you got to win with Dryad and Valakut triggers, but you got to do it the old-fashioned way. Just
And
finding them.
and very notably, because the Dryad here is coming down before the Blood Moon, this Blood Moon is going to stop Kanister from being able to cast any green spells.
Yeah. But it also cuts off Necromentia right now with Javier's mana base, so you kind of have to do that first. But also, right now, the face-up information is Dismember. So if Javier ever wants to Fable, this is the turn where it's actually still pretty available. And you can just go from there after that, because there's no way, shape, or form, with knowing Dismember was in hand, that there's going to be a Primeval Titan on the battlefield next
Yeah, I believe that is true. And I think that Kanister has Javier has the exact same thought process you do. This is a very safe turn to cast the Fable of the Mirror Breaker. This is going to let me loot away the Not Dead after all. Maybe let you loot away the Necromantia. Honestly, or it looks like holding the Blood Crypt to loot away instead.
Wow.
It's like one thing that was kind of interesting was that Javier chose to take the Primeval Titan with the Thoughtseize instead of just saving it for the Necromantia to
Yeah, I
be a
guess
little.
you do give them a creature then, right? It's a 2/2, but
Mhm.
I think I would have played the Blood Crypt personally. Just because you can discard the one not dead for after all and keep the other 2 cards and you feel pretty decent, but
Yeah, I agree. I think that holding it it seems somewhat close to me.
this is going to be interesting if you want to keep a Blood Moon at all in case Kanister would have top decked, well, a Boseiju.
And that is what happened.
Yeah, this is going to be funny. Keeps both Blood Moons though. What a sicko.
Wow. I
What a
don't know, but
sicko.
this is why Javier is like multiple Pro Tour top 8, just like one of the best to
Yeah.
ever do it. Just like, you know, when you play, this is like again really what makes a great Magic player. Someone who is just able to find the best line when you have lots of really good options. And I don't know, it's just such a
Yeah,
fun.
and look at this. This may like go unnoticed of what Javier just did there. He went to second main phase. You're like, what? Why are you doing that? He went to see if he could bait out that Dismember on the Shaman before the attack. Just in case. It's probably not going to happen, but there's that just in case line that Javier was playing in and allowing his opponent to make the most amount of mistakes possible. And I just love that kind of play.
Absolutely.
It's being very aware of what you're doing. Are we getting busy with this Slayer Stronghold? We got a 4/4.
I mean, I don't see why not. The
I guess
Canister
you
could
can
not go
copy it
quietly
too,
into the
right?
night.
No. Michael Synthlatus only copies artifacts, right?
Yeah, only copies artifacts.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, let's. I'm down to get in for 4 here. It would be, I think, ambitious to think that it's gonna like translate to random beatdown win, but it doesn't really cost you anything.
I mean, it's free. You literally can't do anything else right now, and you can still have Dismember up. And Javier knows about the Dismember, so he cannot block. He cannot double block to take it down.
Oh, I guess it does mean that you can't you have to dismember main phase in order to not pay any life for dismember because of the Saber
Sure,
Sanctuary not tapping exactly how you want.
sure, that makes sense. All right, so a Kolaghan's command now. That means both of these creatures can get in there if you want, because you just let the damage happen and then you post combat Kolaghan's command, deal damage and discard, and you force Canister's hand here.
Yeah, and then you get to follow up with a Blood Moon that and, I will say it's a very big deal to play a Blood Moon in these kind of situations against Titan where they just have no basic forest in play. So where they just don't have that out of top decking beside you.
Well, I just realized something that with Javier, looking great here. Of course, anything can happen. I officially will have 0 fans in chat for a scam mirror. I don't think I was going to have any fans playing against you being so popular and playing a brew that you created. But man, now especially, I will have 0 supporters in chat, and I'm here for it. I'm the bad guy today.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, there's no bad guys in the modern Super League. Only uh
Only
God.
boring
Well,
Magic players, I guess. Is that what you're leaning on?
that's what I was not brave enough to say.
I got you, man. Don't worry. Don't worry. I'll call myself out here.
That's okay. I'm excited though. I'm excited to play test the Gruul deck against a high level scam opponent today.
Yeah,
Where
hopefully you get to play against Javier then. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. Actually, I did say that on my stream today. My goal today was to get to play against Javier because I don't think I've ever played a match against him.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Okay. Well, I
so in
hope to
order to do
break
that,
up
I
your
have to win.
dreams here, bud. I hope to break up your dreams.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, he is an awesome person. I get to do a lot of deck techs with him, before the pro tours and talk about his deck choices, both on the deck techs and off. And it's always interesting to hear what him and the rest of Team Handshake come up with.
Mhm.
Really cool to get inside his head a little bit.
Absolutely. So I think you're going to cast the Necromancer here as Javier. What do
Yeah.
you name? Do you think I think I would name the One Ring if I was going to cast Necromancer.
I don't think so. I think I still just named Titan. How you just got to ask yourself the question: how do you beat me without Titans in your deck? And you have this. All right, never mind. You win. That's nice.
One Ring
Nice.
is the name here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Nice call there. I would have named Primetime, but yeah, it doesn't seem very likely that Primetime is going to come into the battlefield. But the thing is, like, what if that was a forest in hand? What if then you draw Beseiju and
Okay.
then you draw Primeval Titan? Like, the clock isn't really there for a turn. Still gives Kanister a chance to top deck Beseiju and then top deck Titan, and he'll greatly regret his decision if that were to happen.
That's true. How many Besejus are there? I think there's only
I
one
think
left
there
in the
was
deck.
3, right?
Yeah. So it is exciting that Kanister did draw the forest. That is a huge deal.
So
Not
there's
only is a Beseiju live, but you can also draw a Dryad, which just stops Javier from being able to attack at all.
Yeah, and you can get the one map, so there's kind of a two
Okay.
Besages, but it has to happen this next turn. There has to be a card. Dryad is probably the best draw at this point into Titan. But yeah, it has to happen this turn. Otherwise, your clock, you're just too far behind. You're not going to be able to get it done. You're just tempoed out at that point.
One thing I would love to see is Kanister float a red mana with the Blood Moon still in play, and then use the Beseiju to kill the Blood Moon, and then you're able to use the Celestia Sanctuary to give haste on the Titan all in one go.
Well, this is Dryad, right? You have to Summoner's Pack. You got to get Dryad, and you play it. You have a blocker, and then you pay for it in your upkeep. 4 mana. You'll have 4 mana left, but you'll
Yeah,
take 2, and then you stabilize. Like, as it stands, if Javier draws nothing but blanks for the rest of the game, Kanister just stabilized with that pact.
yeah, I think so. I mean, you have to think as Kanister too. Like, is that line more likely for me to win the game than me drawing either Beseiju or Expedition map next turn and being able to cast Titan? I think yes. But Kanister also knows that there's 2 unknown cards in Javier's hands. How irrelevant can they be? Can he play around anything?
Yeah.
Um,
One thing Kanister can safely assume though is that there's no lightning bolts in the main deck. Lightning bolt doesn't kill Dryad, it doesn't touch Primeval Titan, it only deals with Grazer and deals the last 3 points. So most of the time, if you're just a player playing in this matchup, you're like, well, maybe they could have bolt. You got to think about these lines and if they would ever leave in bolt. And yeah, of course, we've all played against players who left in cards they shouldn't, but the majority, when you're playing against this caliber of players, you can eliminate those kind of cards from being their options. So now it has
yeah,
to be Beseiju, right?
yeah, Beseiju. Well, I guess you could draw another Dryad. Then you have 2 blockers.
How about a Dismember? I don't think that's it.
It is it actually. You can pact for Dryad, and then Dryad lets you cast Dismember without paying any life.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah,
So yeah,
you can look through
Kanister
this.
is not dead after all.
Oh, he said it. All right, so we
This
have
was
Dryad. We're gonna have Dismember. Now, when the dash comes, do you dismember the Shaman or do you dismember the Regavan and block it? I guess it probably doesn't matter, right?
I think that you would want Javier to attack so that you could eat one of the two creatures in combat. And then you would want to probably dismember the Ragavan because at that point it's worse if it hits you. I guess it's equal though, right? Because you're at
Yeah.
2 life and you're gonna die. This
Oh,
can't what's in the graveyard for Javier? He drew Takenuma for turn. I don't
there's
see
nothing. There's
yeah,
no creatures. So it's gonna get back a Regavan and a Regavan only. But if we're gonna see, I bet we're gonna see Javier with the fact that damage is not going to resolve here. He can Takenuma now for 3, and maybe you hit like Grief or Fury. If you hit Fury, you win the game because you can't pay for Pact. So I would
yeah.
like Javier to Takenuma now when he sees the news that, oh well, Kanister is actually not dead after all, not the other way around.
Yeah, I think you'll also probably end up casting Not Dead After All on the Ragavan.
I think you cast it after if you don't hit, because if
Right.
not, you bring back Regavan from your hand and then you can save it. Oh, he paid too much mana. Come on. Oh, there we go. Javier's got it. He's not falling for anything.
This is maybe the most treasure tokens I've ever seen on the side of a scam player too.
And I like that they're like alternating between different designs. Is this normal?
I didn't
Like,
notice that.
what's going on?
I guess Fable makes a different token than Ragavan does. I think Ragavan makes the
Oh,
Jurassic Park token right now.
sure. That makes sense. That makes sense. All right. Is it a Fury in the graveyard? It's a
Mr. Ragavan.
Regavan. Oh, no.
This would be an incredible comeback from Kanister.
I believe I already said, Kanister has been eliminated. So, yeah, this would be incredible whenever you've completely counted someone out already. But yeah, as it stands right now, the battlefield is stable. And I like Kanister's discipline to wait to see if he could indeed top deck the Beseju and then just knowing that he did not, then go for this line. He would have lost to, something like another Fable, but willing to take that risk, saying, you know what, I cannot beat a single thing that you could have, Javier, besides blanks.
It's so tense. If only Necromancer could name basic lands, this game would have been locked up like 5 turns ago.
Honestly, with these white bordered forests, I think they should have been exiled with the Necromentia just by pure looks of them,
Yeah, I know. It is a weird decision point here to cast the Not Dead After All or not.
Yeah.
It seems to be like largely irrelevant to cast the Not Dead After All on the Ragavan. You just have another one. Your opponent's at 2 life. Canister also knows you have the Ragavan as well, but it's just not doing anything. So I think
Yeah.
I agree with the decision to not.
I
Um,
definitely do. The only thing I would agree with is to, you know, essentially try to think about it faster and not give it away, because Canister can probably pick up on this. As you know, streaming, even online, people bleed information every single turn. And, the people that are at the highest level pick up on it. And, Canister's going to think, why would you be pausing there so long? Okay, you probably have this. Now, that being said, this game, it doesn't largely matter because Canister cannot play around a single thing, but maybe just a lesson, food for thought.
let's see. So Amulet of Vigor off the top. Canister, also very notably, like if Canister does top deck Primeval Titan, it is it's mostly just a Colossal Dreadmaw, which is
Yeah.
not a bad card at this point in the game, but it's not the game ending get double Valak it usually is without a Blood Moon.
Oh, there it is. That's game. Fury
Oh,
right
Corey,
there.
yeah, no, this is game for real, actually.
Yeah. This one is game for real. And now that I was kind of looking at this, Javier is gonna advance here, but he did have the option to hold the Takenuma and maybe hope Canister would attack with the Dryad and do it end step to get a Regavan back, but I don't think Canister would have fell for it anyways. And that's gonna be Javier Dominguez going to the finals of the very first Modern Super League to play against the winner of myself and Aspiring Spike.